everyone, and welcome to Metagame Mastery, where it's not just about what the card does, but how it impacts the game. Guilds of Ravnica preview season is upon us, and we got to see amazing new cards, including Aurelia, Trostani, and more outstanding Dimir cards. If you enjoy this content, click that subscribe button so you get access to all our latest videos, and if you're super stoked about drafting some Guilds of Ravnica, check out our Amazon affiliate link in the description below where you can pre-order your booster box. Without further ado, big time, go time, let's go. Aurelia, Exemplar of Justice, is 4 CMC, 2 colorless, red-white for a 2/5 legendary angel with flying and mentor. At the beginning of combat on your turn, choose up to one target creature you control. Until end of turn, that creature gets +2/+0, and it gains trample if it's red, and gains vigilance if it's white. So, first let's talk about this in Limited. Limited, this is an absolute gem. I mean, we're talking about Sarah Angel with upside. You're effectively paying 4 mana for a 4/5 trample, vigilance, flying mentor. That's freaking solid. Also, it has versatility. You could potentially use her ability to target another creature you have with mentor and give her the +1/+1 counter. And you can sort of move these +1/+1 counters around, which is going to be for a really interesting mechanic in Boros. What about Standard? This has potential in Standard. Bear with me, I'm not going to go too Magical Christmas Land on you, but turn 3 Resplendent Angel, turn 4 Aurelia, turn 5 Lyra, sounds like a really good 1-2-3 combo. And then lastly, the big heartbreak here is for Commander players, because Boros needed to be really strongly represented here in Commander, and this just doesn't do enough. I know, if you don't play Commander, if you're not one of those Commander people, you're thinking, what? That's bonkers. This does a ton. But in Commander, the goalpost is moved significantly. You have to deal potentially 120 damage in order to win a game of Commander. And getting a 4/5 with Trample and Vigilance, even if it does distribute 1 +1/+1 counter, isn't really good enough. So in that regard, this has been a huge letdown for players of that format. True Fire Captain is 4 CMC, red-red, white-white for a 4/3 human knight with mentor. Whenever it's dealt damage, it deals that much damage to target player. So this is really good value in Limited. I don't foresee it getting much play outside of that just because the color weight's obnoxious. It does have potential if you're going to pair it with, say, Star of Extinction, Blasphemous Act, and Commander. Maybe. It does sound a little bit janky, though. Those are really out there examples. That said, in Limited, you're getting a 4/3 for 4 that adds +1/+1 counters. When it attacks, it's very likely you're going to be getting effectively 5/4 for 4 if it survives a single turn cycle. That's good value. This is a great pickup in Limited. Here we have the LRR Loading Ready Run preview card, Swiftblade Vindicator. It's 2 CMC, a red and a white for a 1/1 human soldier with double strike, vigilance, and trample. Okay, all the keywords. I dub the baby Achroma because this is ridiculous, right? Great target for mentor, great to equip up. This will actually see play outside of Limited. This is great in Limited, no doubt about it. It goes perfect in that mentor sub-theme. But this is a great target for you to equip up in regular Boros decks, whether it be in Standard or even Commander. This is a solid option. Garrison Sergeant is 5 CMC, 3 colorless, red-white for a 3/3 Viashino soldier. It has double strike as long as you control a gate. So this is at common. This is a lot more likely you're going to see this in a pack than the previous card. That said, this obviously is not good in any constructed format. I wouldn't even run this in Commander just because it's so contingent on you having a gate. In Limited, this is pretty decent. I mean, there's going to be gates in literally every pack. And getting a 3/3 with double strike that you can mentor up in Boros is potentially really ridiculously powerful. So I feel like it's going to do work in that environment. Skyknight Legionnaire is 3 CMC, 1 colorless, red and white for a 2/2 human knight with flying and haste. So this is a reprint from a card we've seen since the first Ravnica City of Guilds set. It did work. It does work with combat tricks. It does work with pushing damage. It's a nice evasive body. It's nothing spectacular, but it's reliable, and it's a solid 3-drop in Limited. Wojak Bodyguard is 3 CMC, 2 colorless, and a red for a 3/3 human soldier with mentor. It can't attack or block alone. So we've seen this drawback before. The Mog Bodyguard drawback. That said, this thing's pretty decent. You're getting a 3/3 for 3, assuming you have other bodies on the board, which you really want to have in a Boros Mentor build in Limited. Then you're getting good value off of this because you're getting a 3/3 that's going to add a +1/+1 counter for 3 mana. So that's effectively a 4/4 if it survives a turn cycle. That's pretty solid. I think this will definitely see some play in Limited. Glaive of the Guild Pact is 2 CMC for an artifact equipment with equip cost of 3. Equipped creature gets +1/+0 for each gate you control and has vigilance and menace. So this is actually pretty solid. This is the first equipment card we've seen, which will obviously play well with the Boros creatures with all their keywords. It interacts with gates, so I imagine this is going to be good in Limited and not particularly good in Constructed. That said, equipment's really powerful in Limited, and with the creatures they've put forth already, they have potential. If you could pump them up, especially on a lasting basis with something like this, then they become obnoxiously powerful and can take over the game very quickly. I imagine this will also play really well with the Dimir creatures, having hexproof, flying, etc. So this is a very powerful card. I imagine this will go quick in draft. Hunted Witness is 1 white mana for a 1/1 human. When he dies, create a 1/1 white soldier creature token with lifelink. So this is actually kind of a better Doom Traveler, getting you a token that has a keyword on it when it dies. Great if you're looking to populate the board early and provides resiliency. I imagine this will actually see play outside of Limited in Aristocrats decks. Orzhov Aristocrat decks will definitely like this card a lot. Affectionate indirect is 6 CMC, 5 colorless, and a green for a 4/4 beast. And when it enters the battlefield, you may have it fight target creature you don't control. Okay, first off, I love the flavor of this card. If you look at the picture and the flavor text, it's good fun. Outside of that, this is Somberwald Stag 2.0. It could potentially see some play in EDH toolbox decks, but this is definitely going to be a good pickup for you in Limited. Green removal is solid, and green removal that populates the board is potentially indispensable. This is a really solid card. Venerated Luxodon is 5 CMC, 4 colorless, and a white for a 4/4 Elephant Cleric with Convoke. When it enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on it for each creature that was convoked with it. Okay, so this is a really interesting pseudo-anthem effect, allowing you to cheat a mid-sized body onto the board early and be rewarded by putting +1/+1 counters on your creatures in the process. This could potentially come down turn 3 fairly easily, getting you 6/6 power and toughness on the board. That's really solid and limited. I don't foresee it seeing any play in constructed. It's just a little too situational. But in limited, this thing's a beast. Trostani Discordant is 5 CMC, 3 colorless, green and a white for a 1/4 legendary dryad. Other creatures you control get +1/+1. And when she enters the battlefield, create 2 1/1 white soldier creature tokens with lifelink. At the beginning of your end step, each player gains control of all creatures they own. Okay, so this card's solid. This card's solid in almost any format. I mean, you're getting an Anthem effect on a creature. Now, 1/4 doesn't feel good, but you add the 2 1/1 creatures tokens, and then you imagine they get +1/+1. You're getting a total of, hold on, 5/8 power toughness on the board across 3 bodies, 2 of which have a relevant keyword. That's really good value. And then in Commander, people love stealing other people's stuff in Commander. People play huge spells, and being able to take control of those creatures and make them your own is a very powerful 2-for-1 mechanic. This protects you from that, and that's invaluable. This card is going to see play in Commander. This is a absolute windmill slam in Limited. This is solid. Centaur Peacemaker is 3 CMC, 1 colorless, green and a white for a 3/3 Centaur Cleric. When it enters the battlefield, each player gains 4 life. So that hurts. I'm not really a big fan of group hug effects. I mean, if you look at the straight up value, you're getting a 3/3 for 3. That's solid. But then your opponent's gaining life as well as you. And in so many environments where, especially now in standard, people gain so much value off of life gain. There's so many triggered effects off of life gain. You don't want that coming back on you. Even in limited, giving your opponent 4 life, that's a lot. You may not be able to dig yourself out of that hole over the course of a game. Not with just a 3/3 for 3. So overall, I'd say this actually isn't worth it unless you're desperate to put some warm bodies in your deck. Now, on the other hand, we have Knight of Autumn, which is 3 CMC, 1 colorless, green and a white for a 2/1 Dryad Knight. And when it enters the battlefield, you get to choose one. You can either put 2 +1/+1 counters on it, or destroy target artifact or enchantment, or you gain 4 life. Now, this is solid because it's potentially a Kitchen Finks against aggro decks. It's a strictly better Reclamation Sage, and Reclamation Sage sees play everywhere. I mean, when you want to talk about a staple card in Commander, it sees play in Modern, it sees play all over the place. And then, if there's no reason for you to do those other 2 effects, then it's just a 4/3 for 3. That's solid. All across the board. Good. And then on top of that, it's got a relevant creature type. He's going to play very well with the Dominaria cards for Knights. So, all in all, this is a great option. Vivid Revival is 5 CMC, 4 colorless, and a green for a sorcery. Return up to 3 target multicolored cards from your graveyard to your hand. Exile Vivid Revival. So, there's going to be a ton of multicolored cards in this limited format. It does potentially get you card advantage. That said, I don't foresee myself running this in any constructed format. None. Not even Commander. Not even Commander, because there's so much graveyard hate. I'd hate to have this 5 mana spell in my hand and then wind up losing my graveyard and getting nothing for it. It's just too situational to justify its cost. Even in limited, I imagine I would really only run this in sealed, because in draft I'd rather have a creature on the board that doesn't require previous setup to have any effect at all. So all in all, I don't like this card. Arclight Assassin is 3 CMC, 1 colorless, black and a green for a 1/1 elf assassin with death touch. All creatures able to block Arclight Assassin do so. So right out the gate, 1 toughness, it's disqualified from standard. Chain Whirler's just going to mess it up. In limited, this has a lot of potential. Yes, you're getting a 1/1 for 3. That's the bad feels. You're not wrong about that. What I like about it is that it's got a built-in lure so that on turn 4, you're going to nick something off the board with this. And if you could pair this with a combat trick on turn 4, you could potentially do a one-sided board wipe and nix a lot of, like, all of your opponent's stuff. Not all the while pushing through damage with your other creatures. So in limited, I really like this card. In constructed, it's basically worthless. And here we have the masterpiece version of Vraska was finally revealed. The art looks gorgeous. I mean, it's fantastic. Um, I really like the look of it. I'm still not sold on this card in constructed formats. Ritual of Soot is 4 CMC, 2 colorless, black black for sorcery, destroy all creatures with converted mana cost 3 or less. So this makes Smother look like an absolute chump, right? This is a really good card. This is really good in limited, clearing out your opponent's little creatures, those 2-drops that are so important in that environment. But in standard, this is at least sideboard playable in standard, bare minimum. And this really contributes to how much slower and control heavy standard is looking post rotation. This is going to clear out Goblin Chain Whirler. This is going to clear out so many of the wizards and knights and low value critters that populate the board in those really dangerous aggro decks. And that's really, really powerful. It's going to slow down the format a lot. I don't know if it makes the jump to modern per se, because they already have cards like Damnation, etc. But this is really going to make an impact in standard, and it's an absolute first pick in limited. Blood Operative is 3 CMC, 1 colorless, black black for a 3/1 vampire assassin with lifelink. When it enters the battlefield, you may exile target card from a graveyard. Whenever you surveil, if Blood Operative is in your graveyard, you may pay 3 life. If you do, return it to your hand. So this is solid. I know it's squishy, and there's so many things that nix a 1 toughness creature off the board. That's absolutely true. If this is going to see any standard play, it's going to come out of sideboards to hate on graveyard tech. But in limited, this is great because you're getting a potential 6 life swing. It's going to fuel itself. It's going to act as sort of a pseudo removal to disrupt graveyard-based strategies, get rid of their best options, and then you can get it back. It's got resiliency, and if you're going to be surveilling anyways, which basically any deck that's running black or blue should be surveilling, because it's easily the most pushed mechanic in the format, then you can just continuously bring this back and get value off of it and continue disrupting your opponent's strategy. So all in all, this is a really, really good card in limited. I also like this in Commander, specifically in Edgar Markov decks. I know, any vampire can go in Edgar Markov. That's not necessarily the case, but this one adds some unique value to that strategy. Creeping Chill is 4 CMC, 3 colorless, and a black for sorcery. It deals 3 damage to each opponent, and you gain 3 life. But when it's put into your graveyard from your library, you may exile it. If you do, it deals 3 damage to each opponent and you gain 3 life. So this is a card that you basically never want to cast. You only ever want to use its ability, hit this off of a surveil, bolt your opponent, and get 3 life. That's pretty solid. This is specifically made for its interaction with surveil, and for that reason alone, I love it. Dimir Spybug is 2 CMC, a blue and a black for a 1/1 insect with flying and menace. So that's already really hard to block. But whenever you surveil, put a +1/+1 counter on Dimir Spybug. Now, I don't foresee this seeing any standard play. It's got 1 toughness, and your opponent could drop Chain Whirler the very next turn before you even get a chance to pump it up, nixing it off the board. So it's pointless in standard. In limited, though, this thing is sick. This thing is absolutely sick. It could easily be a 3/3 flying menace by turn 5, 4 or 5 even. That's really, really good value for only 2 mana. I like this card a lot. Disinformation Campaign is 3 CMC, 1 colorless, blue and a black for an enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, you draw a card and each opponent discards a card. Whenever you surveil, return Disinformation Campaign to its owner's hand. Okay, so first, I dub thee the fake news media. Okay, but I'm done. Alright, moving on. We see the return of the trials, right? This is an enchantment that we get to play with it coming back to our hand over and over again. When you initially play this, you get +1 card advantage because it replaces itself and your opponent discards a card. Every time you play it from that point thereafter, you're getting +2 card advantage. So that's going to add up very quickly over time. If you can grind the game down enough where you can afford to lose the 3 mana without immediately impacting the board over and over again, then this is going to be an extremely powerful card. I would not want to run this out on turn 3 because it doesn't immediately impact the board. But that said, if you can grind it out late game, do this in addition to other spells, 2-3 turn spells per turn, then this is going to snowball and get out of control for your opponents very quickly. Here we have a Jameer split card. It's Connive and Concoct. Connive is 2 colorless and 2 Dimir hybrid, which is any combination of blue and black for a sorcery. Gain control of target creature with power 2 or less. So on its face, it looks like it's going to be a mana disadvantage, but don't let that trick you. Not all creatures with power 2 or less are 2 mana bears. In fact, there are some very powerful cards in this format, especially in limited, that have power 2 or less, but powerful effects. Aurelia, Trostani are just a couple that come to mind. So in that regard, this is a great potential swing on the board state, stealing your opponent's creature with a very powerful static effect and bringing it over to your side. And then Concoct is 5 CMC, 3 colorless, blue and a black for a sorcery. Surveil 3, then return a creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So first things first, this is just a more powerful Rise from the Grave, right? You get to fuel your graveyard, get some virtual card advantage, and then you get to reanimate a creature. So there are plenty of effects in limited. You're going to love this, but in Commander, there are plenty of spells that people run that are of a similar casting cost and do less than this. All in all, this is a very versatile card that will see play both in limited and Commander as well. Watcher in the Mist is 5 CMC, 3 colorless, blue blue for a 3/4 spirit with flying. When it enters the battlefield, surveil 2. So Cloud Reader Sphinx was first pickable in many packs of Dominaria. This is effectively a Cloud Reader Sphinx with surveil instead of scry. That's good. This is a good card in limited, period. Enhanced Surveillance is 2 CMC, 1 colorless, and a blue for an enchantment. You may look at an additional 2 cards each time you surveil. You can also exile this to shuffle your graveyard into your library. Wow! Wow! This is amazing support for a surveil mechanic, allowing you to get +2 on all future surveils, and then ensuring that you don't deck yourself by fueling your graveyard. This is an amazing card for an amazing mechanic. And here we have the English version of the newest reprint of Disdainful Stroke. It's 2 CMC, 1 colorless, and a blue for an instant counter target spell with converted mana cost 4 or greater. So this saw play last time it was in Standard. I imagine it can see play again. It's a very versatile counter spell, and it's also really, really good in Commander as well. So I love the new art on this. I love just the aesthetic of the Assassin's Creed Dimir. So I imagine this is going to do very well yet again. Maximize Altitude is 1 blue mana for a sorcery. Target creature gets +1/+1 and gains flying until end of turn. It also has Jumpstart. So jump effects are always good just for pushing through damage, especially if you have a big fat body like Yargle, or in this format, you're going to be looking at something along the lines of a Convoke creature, or even the 08 Cyclops, I forget his name. This thing is a really solid combat trick that allows you to storm off pretty easily late game. So I love this card a lot. Omnispell Adept is a preview card that we get from Commander and Brew. It's 5 CMC, 4 colorless and a blue for a 3/4 human wizard. You can pay 2 colorless and a blue, tap it. You may cast an instant or sorcery card from your hand without paying its mana cost. So this has potential to get nuts, especially in Commander. I don't imagine this is going to be particularly good in Standard. I don't imagine this is going to be particularly good in Limited even. But in Commander, where you see spells that are 7, 8, 9, 10 mana or more, this is going to help you cheat those spells into play early, and that's a very, very powerful effect. Crackling Drake is 4 CMC, blue, blue, red, red for a star 4 Drake with flying, and its power is equal to the total number of instant and sorcery cards you own in exile and in your graveyard. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card. So this is just an Enigma Drake with upside. And Enigma Drake is really good and limited. This is potentially Standard playable. I don't know about that just because there's so many other options, but this is really powerful because not only does it replace itself, but on top of that, it makes it so that even if you're not using Jumpstart and your opponent's just hating out your graveyard, you still get credit for those cards. And that's really powerful. I like this card. If nothing else, in Limited, it's going to be a gem. Arclight Phoenix is 4 CMC, 3 colorless and a red for a 3/2 Phoenix with flying and haste. If they begin combat on your turn, if you cast 3 or more instant or sorcery spells this turn, return Arclight Phoenix from your graveyard to the battlefield. So the general idea with this is you never want to pay mana for it. You just want to populate your graveyard, and then you have a good turn where you storm off and you tack in with a bunch of these. This has potential to be a powerful finisher in the right Standard deck. And in Limited, it's going to be a little bit harder, but in the right build, they're definitely pushing a spells matter is it theme. And in that environment where you're popping off a lot of 1 or 2 cost spells, this could be a pain in your opponent's butt very quickly. So all in all, I like this card. If nothing else, it's a 3/2 flyer for 4 with upside. It has haste as well. Those are always playable unlimited. Command the Storm is 5 CMC, 4 colorless and a red for an instant that deals 5 damage to target creature. So this is for limited purposes only. It's fine removal. You're still going to be happy picking this up just for the fact that removal cards are always at a premium. Inescapable Blaze is 6 CMC, 4 colorless, red for an instant that can't be countered. It deals 6 damage to any target. Okay, so this is not as good as Banefire. And for that reason alone, I don't imagine it's going to see standard play. That said, in limited, this is a really solid choice. Getting to nix 6 off the board, and the Dimir players or the Izzet players can't counter it or say or do anything about it. That's pretty powerful. Not to mention, this can finish your opponent off in a stalled board state, or nix a planeswalker off the board. Very versatile, very solid. That's it for today. If you enjoyed this content, click that subscribe button to get access to all our latest videos. And if you're looking to draft up some Guilds of Ravnica, which looks to be a really good limited format, check out our Amazon affiliate link below where you can pre-order your booster box. This has been Metagame Mastery. Peace!